the word for today is in due time will God exalt thee. I'm gonna say it again. In due time will God exalt thee. Okay, we're gonna be in 1 Esther chapter 9 and then 2 Samuel chapter 7. Okay, so we're going to be in 1 Esther chapter 9 and then 2 Samuel chapter 7. And so I want to let you guys know that the Hebrew terminology is Esther means hidden, secret, to conceal. And then it also means star. So she's the star of the overall show. She's the star of like the entire story. Now I don't know if you guys know a little bit about the story of Esther, but Esther was a Jewish woman. And pretty much what transpired with her is that she pretty much was able to marry a king and become a queen just in time to be able to ensure that the Jews did not get destroyed and they did not, of course, reap any form of chaos. And so Samuel in Hebrews means God has heard or name of God. So God has heard or name of God. So the spiritual meaning means divine communication, answered prayers, and surrendered purpose. God has heard or asked of God. God has heard or asked of God. Okay. So we're going to be in Esther 9. We're going to be in Esther 9. So in the midst of chaos, do you trust God to turn it around in your favor? I'm going to ask y'all again. In the midst of chaos, do you trust God to turn it around in your favor? That's a good question. In the midst of chaos, do you trust God to turn it around in your favor? And do you trust that God will make your enemies your footsteps? So I'm going to read it again. In the midst of chaos, do you trust God to turn it around in your favor? And do you trust that God will make your enemies your footsteps? So trust that God's timing is always on time, no matter the circumstances. So let's go ahead and actually read it. And sorry, y'all, my Bible is actually to the right of me. So you'll see me looking down a lot, but this is just where my Bible is. So again, I just want to give you guys that in the midst of chaos, do you trust God to turn it around in your favor? Do you trust that God will make your enemies into your footsteps? Trust that God's timing is always on time, no matter the circumstances. Okay, so let's go ahead and read Esther chapter 9, verse 1. We're going to read Esther chapter 9, verse 1. I'm going to be in the NIV version. So this is my NIV version. And so Esther chapter 1 says, on the 13th day of the 12th month, the month of Adar, the edict commanded by the king was to be carried out. On this day, the enemies of the Jews had hopped to overpower them. But now the tables were turned, and the Jews got the upper hand over those who hated them. Y'all, listen to this part again. It says, on this day, the enemies of the Jews had hopped to overpower them. But now the tables were turned, and the Jews got the upper hand over those who hated them. So, do y'all hear exactly what transpired? The Jews were able to have the tables turned in their favor. So, I don't know again if you guys know a little bit about the story, but what I got from this was in the midst of triumph and at the nick of time, God will allow your authority to shine in places of darkness. So, I'm going to say it again. In the midst of triumph and at the nick of time, God will allow your authority to shine in places of darkness. Chapter 1 reveals that the Jews had hoped, meaning had faith to overcome their enemies, and the Jews were given the upper hand to conquer them. So the story again, y'all, is that Esther was an unknown Jew to the king. Esther was an orphan and became queen by hiding her Jewish heritage. Esther overheard Haman's scheme to kill and steal the overall Jews due to his ego. I want to let you guys know that this highlights that no matter the tactic, God's divine timing will reign and reflect despite of your enemies. I want to say that again. This highlights that no matter the tactic, God's divine timing will reign and reflect despite of your enemies. So how many times have you guys actually went through a season or went through a time frame where you felt like you were pretty much just at a place of stagnation due to the things that were transpiring around you? When have you ever felt like, you know what, God, like, hold on a second, I got enemies to the left, I got enemies to the right, I got enemies up ahead of me, God, but God, which direction do I go? But see, to me, God is letting it be known that God is saying that if you just trust Him in the midst of despair, if you trust Him in the midst of it all, He will indeed reign. He will indeed exalt thee. He will allow you to be able to overcome the things that try to tackle you, which is why He says, allow your enemies to be your footsteps. Allow the enemies that try to come upon you and try to come before you, allow yourself to be exalted into thee. And God, this is just my overall aspect and of course provision of what I have gotten from this overall passage. And so when I say Bible study, I get on here, I read the Bible and what I read it for, and then of course I make little notes, sub notes in regards to what's reflecting. So then let's go ahead and go to verse 5. It says your enemies never know when God will exalt you to surpass all trauma, bullying tactics, and harassing. Again, note 5 says your enemies never know when God will exalt you to surpass all trauma, bullying tactics, and harassing. So let's go ahead and read verse 5. So verse 5 says, the Jews struck down all the enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them, and they did what they pleased to those who hated them. So again, I'm going to read, the Jews struck down all their enemies with the sword, killing and destroying them, and they did what they pleased to those who hated them. Again, it says that the tables turned around and overturned in their favor. But it says, but do you trust the Lord to show up and elevate you within a nick of time? Because it looked as if they weren't going to have the upper hand, but God was able to turn it around in their favor. So what I get from this is that God overall timing, his divine timing, and showing up in the nick of despair, in the nick of it being, hey Angela, in the nick of there being a chaos or a triumph, God allows his overall divine timing, his divine intervention to be able to show up in the midst of despair prior to there being an overall issue. Sorry, you guys. So I have that. So then I have verse 22, right? I have verse 22. My apologies, y'all. So now we're going to verse 22. And verse 22 says, thank y'all for bearing with me. As the time when the Jews got relief from their enemies, and as the month when their sorrow was turned into joy, and their mourning into a day of celebration, he wrote them to observe the days as days of feasting and joy, and giving presents of food to one another and gifts to the poor. So the Jews agreed to continue celebration they had began doing, with Mordecai had written to them. So let me actually get it out of my other version of the Bible. I have Esther 9, and this is going to be in my NRS standard version. Hey, True. This is going to be in the NRS standard version. So let me go ahead and go to Esther here. So we're in Esther 9, guys. I'm actually reading out of the NIV, but I'm actually getting ready to read out of my my NRS version as well. So that's 386. Let me go to 386, y'all. Let's see, 386. And the topic highlighted, hey Kim. So in the topic highlighted for this is destruction of the enemies of the Jews. So again, we were in Esther chapter 9, and that is verse 22. So I'm actually going to read it out of this version as well. It says, as the days on which the Jews gained relief from their enemies, and as the month that had been turned for them from sorrow into gladness, and from mourning into a holiday, that they should make them days of feasting and gladness days, for sending gifts of food to one another and presence to the poor. Okay? So the note that I have for 22 is, do you trust that the story written, my apologies, do you trust that the story written is already vindicating on your behalf? Do you? So it says, do you trust that the story written is already vindicating on your behalf? Do you trust that God is already moving in your favor, no matter what it looks like? Do you trust that God is already getting ready to move, despite of what it seems like? Do you trust that God is already vindicating and moving on your behalf, despite of what it seems like? When is the last time that you actually say, God, you know what, despite of what it looks like, I trust you? No matter what it seems like, God, I trust you. I know that you're doing a thing for me. I know that you're moving on my behalf. I know that you're going to do this thing. I know that you're going to exalt me, oh God. But God, I trust that what you are doing in the midst of despair, you're doing it for me. When is the last time that you actually thank God for the things that He's already doing? When have you already rejoiced and let God know that, you know what? Joy is in the morning. I know today may not have been the best day, God, but I know that tomorrow is going to be amazing because I trust that what you're doing is already being vindicated on my behalf. So the note that I made here is, are you thankful for the little, knowing that God will never make you go without? And this was actually for me, y'all. Are you thankful for the little, knowing that God will never make you go without? I'm going to ask you again and make yourself a note. Are you thankful for the little, knowing that God will never make you go without? Okay, let's continue. So then we're going to 2 Samuel verse 1. And I'm back in my NIV version. Give me 1 second, y'all. Yep, I'm back in my NIV version. Okay, let's see. And this is 2 Samuel. Give me 1 second, y'all. 2 Samuel 7. Let me fix myself. Okay. Y'all, until I can get my desk put up, that's when I'll be able to have it like directly in front of me on YouTube and TikTok. So for right now, I have it set up in the best form and I apologize. So guys, again, we are in 2 Samuel chapter 7, and it says God's promise to David. So I have for verse 1 through 2, my apologies, verse 1 through 2 for 2 Samuel chapter 7. It says, do you trust that God will allow rest from your enemies? Do you trust that God will allow rest from your enemies and elevate you to greatness in the midst of despair? Do you trust that God will elevate you even though it looks like or seems like that God is not moving? Do you trust that God is indefinitely doing a miraculous thing for you no matter what it looks like? And when I say enemies, it doesn't just mean people. Sometimes you could feel defeated by certain things. Do you trust that God is elevating you and moving you up in the midst of despair? Do you trust that He's doing that? And so, with that, again, this is just my overall opinion in regards to what I see here, in regards to what I get from the messages. Hey, this is just my overall viewpoint and what it is that I see in regards to what is here. And then let's hop down to verse 3. Verse 3 says, Nathan replied to the king, whatever you have in mind, go ahead and do it, for the Lord is with you. Let's read that again. Nathan replied to the king, whatever you have in mind, go ahead and do it, for the Lord is with you. So the note that I made for verse 3 is, God is giving you the okay to elevate and uplift and move according to His plan. Do you trust that God's plan is working in your favor? Because He told David, go ahead and do the mighty thing, the thing that you want to do. He let it be known in verse 3, again, 2 Samuel chapter 7, verse 3. He told David, go ahead and do the thing that you want to do. Do you trust me enough to know that wherever you go with it, As long as you carry my word, as long as you carry me with it, as long as you speak to me, as long as you make it plain that I will do it. Many of us are sitting in a place and we're not understanding that God will indeed do it for us if we just move on it. If we move on this thing and we act on the thing that God is saying that we can act on, God gives us the permission as long as it's within the willing of what it is that He desires to give us. So, with that, He's saying, with the promise, He's saying that He's given David the promise. The topic is God's promise to David. So, God made a promise to him, He made a commitment to him, letting it be known that He will indeed move on his behalf. So, a lot of us are sitting in a place without faith. A lot of us are sitting at a place and not understanding. A lot of us are sitting at a place and not getting it. We're not understanding. But God says, if you trust me just a little, whoa, will I make it a lot? But you have to first trust Him, right? So then I'm going to hop down. And sorry, my Bible is to the right of me, guys. And then I'm on YouTube. So I'm trying to keep everything aligned. So sorry about that. So then it's here, verse 8, it says, now then tell my servant David, this is what the Lord Almighty says. I took you from the pasture and from following the flock to be ruler over my people Israel. I have been with you wherever you have gone, and I have cut off all your enemies from before you. Now I will make your name great like the names of the greatest men on earth, and I will provide a place for my people Israel and will plant them so that they can have a home of their own and no longer be disturbed. So I'm going to read that again. He says, now then tell my servant David that this is what the Lord Almighty says. He basically has allowed David to be ruler over his people. And he's allowing David the rest and also to cut off his enemies. So a lot of the times when God is talking to us and He's telling us the things that we need to do, and if we can hear Him clearly, first and foremost, are we even taking the time to speak to God? Are we even taking the time to be able to acknowledge God and who He is? Are we even taking the time to be able to say, hey, God, you know what? Hey, Rise, I trust you with the plan despite of what it looks like. God, I know it looks like this over here. It looks like the bill is due. It looks like this thing is not working according to my plan and what I think. But God is saying, do you trust me enough to be able to do it? Do you trust me enough to be able to forfeit in it and go before? So again, guys, tonight, we were in, my apologies, just that fast, Esther chapter 9, and then 2 Samuel chapter 7. And again, the topic is, in due time will God exalt thee. In due time will God exalt thee. So that is going to be the topic of tonight's overall Bible study. And guys, I thank you guys so much for joining. I'm actually going to read it and post it online on TikTok as well as YouTube. And I hope to be able to see you guys Friday for our bingo game, because we have a bingo game coming up this Friday at 7:30. We have a bingo game coming up this Friday at 7:30. And I'm actually going to post the word on YouTube as well as posting it on TikTok so that you guys have that overall viewpoint to be able to use it there as well. And excuse my bonnet. I just like to show up and be obedient. But I will have this posted on TikTok and YouTube. Hey girl. I will have this posted on YouTube and TikTok. And then what we will do is we will be back for bingo at 7:30, and there will be a gas card being given out. So I hope to see you guys for bingo at 7:30. A gas card will be given out. I will be posting on this page slightly the notes from Bible study. Also, you can click the link in the bio to join the school link, where we will have multiple different things, multiple different events within the school link. And I hope to see you guys soon. Okay. Have a good night. Thank you for your time. And Bible study is done. Bye, guys.